Good afternoon. Welcome to this afternoon's briefing. I appreciate you being here today, and thanks to all those who are watching us out on the live stream today as well. I've got a fair bit of information to share as usual, so I'll just jump right into things here. Before I get into the new numbers in the report today, though, I'd like to provide just a little bit of background about some of the survey work and other information that we used in preparing the numbers in the report today. First off, a couple of field surveys I'll talk about for cotton. We have our objective yield survey. Just a reminder there, you can see our sample size is 840. And of course, as a reminder, this is the survey where we actually send the trained enumerators into fields to take counts and measurements, and this time of year, actually harvest those sample plots. In fact, getting most of those samples harvested prior to the report today. On the orange side, in particular Florida oranges, we had our objective measurement survey work there. Of course, that's our size and drop work that we do. You can see we visited just over 1,800 groves to capture that information between November 4th and the 23rd. And then last but not least, we have our cotton ginning survey. This is a survey that we do of all the known gins in the country. You can see there's 531 active gins at this point. We reached out to each of those from November 30th through December the 5th, essentially asking them to report to us the number of bales that they've currently ginned to date, and then also how many additional bales they expect to gin for the remainder of the season. And so that is the survey work that we did preparing for the report today. One other note I want to pass along to you. You'll find this gray box on the front of the report. There is a little bit of a special thing we wanted to point out there. You may remember last year, due to some reduction in external funding, we did not have a pecan production forecast in the December report. I'm happy to report that that external funding agreement was restored for this year, and so you will see pecan production forecast in the report later on in my presentation. I'll cover that, and then as part of that, we will also have our preliminary PDI numbers or pecan production report in January again this year as well. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump into the numbers. We'll start things off with cotton. Just to give you a quick update on harvest progress, what you can see on this first graphic is the percent of the cotton crop that's harvested by week for this year and the previous several seasons. The dark red line does represent the current year. You can see here as of November the 27th, 84% of the cotton crop had been harvested. That compares to 84% last year and the 5-year average of 79%. Now, with that said, we'll look at the forecast for all cotton. No change to planted and harvested acres. As you can see, this is normally the case in December, but a quick reminder, you see the big increase in planted area this year, but the real story, of course, is the big drop in harvested area, primarily due to the dry conditions and high abandonment in Texas and other parts of the country around there, but Texas, of course, the leading producing state, having a big impact there. Our yield, though, we're now forecasting at 868 pounds per acre. That's down 1.5% or just 13 pounds from last month's forecast. Up 1.5% or just 13 pounds from last month's forecast, 6% higher than last year. So our new production forecast for all cotton, 14.2 million bales, up 1.5% from last month's forecast, but of course down sharply due to that high abandonment this year. Next, taking a closer look at the cotton yield and how it compares over the recent seasons. You can see the trend line plotted in there with the gray line as well. The 868 pounds per acre does actually represent the highest yield since 2018, and in fact the 5th highest yield on record. Next, we'll take a look at the cotton yields by state and how they compare with last month's forecast. The way this map is laid out, the top number is the current yield forecast for each of those states. The lower number represents the percent change from last month's forecasted yield. Any state colored in any shade of blue is increasing from last month. Any shade of red indicates a decrease from last month. And of course, the deeper the shade, the larger the change. Not very many big changes happening here month over month. In fact, you can see Texas, Georgia, our two leading producing states, no change in the yield this month there. But there are some minor changes across the country as well. In addition to that, anytime you see a pound sign next to a number, it indicates that that is a record high. and we are in fact expecting record high yields in New Mexico this season. This next map also highlights the current yield forecast for cotton, but in this particular case, it shows the percent change from last year's final yield. So here you can get a picture of what's happening with yield this year versus last. And of course, as you look across the country, you can see kind of a couple of different things happening. Lower yields in Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, that portion of the country with the extreme dry conditions there. Conversely, in the Southeast, you can see mostly better yields year over year. And that is what is leading to our overall minor change at the U.S. level from last year. This next graphic just highlights the cotton production total for this season and how it compares with the recent seasons. And as you can see in the graphic here, we are looking at the lowest cotton production since 2015. Next, we'll take a quick look at how the current cotton production forecast compares with the published expectations, the way this graphic is laid out. Each of those blue dots represents an individual industry member's published expectation of what they believe the cotton production forecast will be today. The red block represents the current NASS forecast. You can see that red block up at the top end of all those blue dots, indicating that it is a little bit higher than folks were expecting to see today. Next, we'll move on to sugarcane. We do have an updated sugarcane forecast in the report today as well. You can see a very minor change to the harvested area, up just 0.2% from our previous forecast. Yield adjusted down just slightly from last month's forecast, down just 0.8% month over month. Overall, we are looking at a higher yield than last year. So our new production forecast for sugarcane, 34.1 million tons, down 0.7% from last month, but still 3.7% higher than what was produced last season. As I mentioned early on in the presentation, we do have an updated pecan forecast in the report today. You can see we're now forecasting 280 million pounds to be produced this season. That's down 3.6% from what we forecast back in October, but is still expected to be 9.7% larger crop than last season. Georgia, of course, is our largest producing state. That's primarily what's driving that decrease from the October forecast. Excuse me. But overall, again, as I mentioned, relatively good crop expected this season. Also included in the report today, we have updated citrus forecasts. Of course, because it is December, we only have Florida reporting this month. But just as a reminder, this is the first citrus forecast in Florida since the hurricanes came through earlier this season. So this is really our first opportunity to measure any impact from both of those storms and any other impact that's happened over the course of the last couple of months. With that in mind, you can see all orange production nationally. We're expecting 2.833 million boxes. That's down 11.3% from our October forecast, 18.4% below what was produced last season. If we look specifically in Florida, that Florida all orange production is expected to be down 8 million boxes from what we forecast back in October. As you might expect, large fruit drop due to the hurricanes, and in addition, some of the greening situation there really leading to that big drop in expected production since October. In fact, looking at the all orange production in Florida, we expect it now to be the smallest crop since the 1937-38 season. Specifically, that is a 4 million box reduction from October for each of the non-Valencia and Valencia portions of the crop. Looking at the grapefruit, there you can see nationally 321,000 tons. That's down 2.4% from October, 14.2% below what was produced last season. Again, looking at Florida specifically, that represents the fourth lowest production on record in that state, and in fact, the lowest Florida production since the 1910-1911 season. Looking at lemons, no change from our previous forecast there. Of course, as I mentioned, only Florida reporting this month. We do not forecast lemons in Florida. And then last but not least, the tangerines, 829,000 tons. That's down just 0.5% from October. up 13.3% year over year. Of course, the majority of tangerines are produced in California. No update coming from California this month. I would point out in Florida, again, we're looking at the third lowest tangerine production on record for them. This next slide just highlights some of the upcoming reports over the next month or so. You can see coming up on the 15th, we'll have the organics report coming out, as well as our small grain county estimates. Cotton ginnings again on the 22nd. On the 23rd, we'll have cattle on feed, and then of course the December hogs and pigs report. Rounding things out for the year on December 30th with the ag prices. Of course, beginning of January, our monthly care reports. Cost of pollination, we recently announced that was coming back, so you can see on January 11th. That will be published, and then of course January 12th, that'll be a big day for us, as we'll be back here to talk about the annual crop production numbers, as well as grain stocks, rice stocks, and our first look at the upcoming season's winter wheat planted acreage. Just a couple of quick reminders before we wrap things up here from NASS. First of all, just reminding folks about the 99th Annual Ag Outlook Forum coming up February 23rd and 24th. That will be a hybrid event, so we will have an opportunity for folks to attend in person as well as virtually. You can see sign-up buttons available there, as sign-up is open and ready for folks right now. As usual, at 1 o'clock Eastern this afternoon, I will be on Twitter hosting our monthly Stat Chat series, which means I will be out there live answering any questions folks might have about today's report or anything else going on here at NASS. And that is the last slide that I have for you. So that's going to wrap things up for me for the NASS report today. So with that, I will turn things over to Dr. Mark Jekanowski as he covers the briefing for the WASDE report.